indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
They asked me that, I guess when you didn't know, but I guess I don't think it's worth my going there.
Item number 2, our approval of minutes. There are 2 sets of minutes, one from a regular meeting held on May 23rd, and the second from a special meeting held on June 4. Entertain any corrections to these minutes?
I'll move to adopt the minutes.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And then the special meeting, which was held on June 4. You moved?
What?
Did you move them?
Yes.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay, without objection on those. Updates will be really quick because we have a agenda chock full of action items. First and foremost, I received notice earlier this month that Al Cava, who has served as the town's Director of Labor Relations, is retiring effective June 30. Al Cava came to the town back in 1996, initially as the first Director of Human Resources. He was instrumental in creating a separate Department of Human Resources. The town previously had a personnel department under the auspices of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. He served initially under the administration of Tom Ragland, Lolly Prince, and then Dick Bergstresser, and at that point he transitioned to become the Director of Labor Relations. There had been a labor contracts officer here at the town. Under Connecticut statutes, specifically the Municipal Employee Relations Act, the responsibility to negotiate labor agreements, collective bargaining agreements, rests with the chief elected official. That is, in this case, the first selectman. The first selectman has had, for as long as I can remember, being 50 years old, 1977, 78, the position has been full-time. There has been someone who's served as a labor contracts officer. We have had a labor relations director for many years. So in terms of next steps, there is review of the position in terms of the nature of what the responsibilities are. There will be discussions not only internally, but I'm going to be doing outreach to not only the BET. It just so happens a couple of the BET members are seeking this position, so I'm going to include them in the eventual selection of a person. So the discussions are preliminary, but we will miss Al because right now we have 5 contracts in process. So as you can imagine, the timing of this is not necessarily ideal, but opportunities presented themselves for Al. So stay tuned. Al's not available to work on a contract basis because, as I said, he is going to be doing other things. But we wish him well. I think we're going to have some type of acknowledgement of his service sometime in the next week or so. And again, I thank him very much. A couple of minor items, but nonetheless exciting ones. Today we had a Flag Day ceremony at the Glenville Elementary School. The Police Honor Guard participated. We also had, through our Veterans Council, an acknowledgement of D-Day, and we were very pleased to have Robert Fullalove, a Royal British Navy veteran who lives in Greenwich and has for many years, speak as to his experiences on that day. So we're thankful to him for his service as well as those others. We are in the process of evaluating one of the 2 citizen members of the retirement board. I had a meeting on Monday night with BET Chair Jill Oberlander and RTM moderator Tom Byrne to interview Michael Wasik, who is one of the 2 citizen representatives, and we will be convening a more formal meeting to act on his appointment or reappointment to that important board. Also, I was advised that the leadership of the Local 1042 International Association of Firefighters has changed. After 20 years, the president, John Novak, did not seek another term. The new officers for the coming year are Matt Brooks as president, Tom Leonard as secretary, Doug Sylvester as treasurer, and the executive board is Sean Morris, Jason Jaraka, Doug Howley, Nate Schulte, Mike Veronelli, and Billy Richardson. So those gentlemen are important as we are in negotiations with the 1042 and certainly have quite a bit of interaction. That concludes the updates. Under old business, we are taking up approval of a settlement between the town of Greenwich and Eversource Energy. We have with us our attorneys from Cohen and Wolf, who so ably represented us throughout this long and arduous process. David Ball and David Dobin have been a wonderful resource to the town as they have tremendous experience in dealing with the Connecticut Siting Council, which is a regulatory body that has, quite frankly, immense control over the public utilities and what they can and cannot do in the state, in particular municipalities. As many people may recall, we were successful in defeating the initial proposal that came before the Siting Council. And we had the great support and collaboration from members of the community in and around those areas. We wound up with a second docket, I think it's 461A, and that resulted in changes, but those changes were not necessarily to our satisfaction, so we filed an appeal. And the appeal process has resulted in what we are going to be voting on publicly today. And I'd like to ask Attorney David Bell to join us. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the contributions of our professional staff here at the town. Certainly at the outset, Town Planner Katie DeLuca, our entire land use team prior to her retirement, Denise Savageau, Patricia Sesto is here, Public Works, Jim Michael, our Deputy Commissioner, has been the point man with Amy Sieber in these last few months, and certainly our legal department and a whole host of other parts of the town government that would have impact, notably parks and trees. So we had Bruce Spayman heavily involved in this, along with Joe Siciliano. So if I've omitted anyone, my apologies, but know that it really was the town administration, when I say the professionals, who helped guide and shape this issue and bring forth the outcome that we have. So tried to give you an intro.
It's an excellent intro, thank you. So I think I don't want to take up too much time with the background, but I do think maybe a couple minutes to just explain how we got to this point would be beneficial for everyone.
If there was a desire to go into executive session to hear any of this, we can do that as well and then come back out. I don't want to presume people don't, but I know that we were briefed by you. So
Right.
Between you and I, as far as I know, there's nothing earth-shattering that would require that, but if people would like that, they can do that.
You've already told us everything.
You've had enough.
I'm sworn to
executive
secrecy.
Okay, so then I'll proceed. Okay. So as the first selectman correctly stated, this entire process is governed by the Connecticut Siting Council, and that's as a matter of Connecticut statute, section 16-50G creates exclusive jurisdiction for the Siting Council on the siting of transmission lines, as long as they're 69 kilovolts or more. In this case, we're talking about a 115 kilovolt facility. So this was purely within the Siting Council's jurisdiction, and as a result, whereas there might normally be planning and zoning issues, public works issues, all of that is taken out of the hands of the municipality and put into the hands of the Siting Council. So that's the playing ground on which we find ourselves. The first action, the first application filed by Eversource is actually almost 4 years ago. It was June 2015. And we, the town, was very active in contesting that application. The initial application would have created a new transmission line that would have, from the town's perspective, impacted the natural resources of Bruce Park. It would have gone beneath ball fields, tidal ponds, forested areas, and in addition, the initial proposal called for high-pressure fluid-filled cables, which was a concern from an environmental perspective for the town. And the cost, by the way, of the initial proposal was $140 million. And at the same time, we were contesting whether there was a need for the project. And I will say the town has, throughout, contested whether or not there is a need for this project. And that was essentially the litigation that took place before the Siting Council. As the First Selectman correctly stated, in the first round, the Siting Council agreed with our arguments and denied the application without prejudice to Eversource coming back if based on certain conditions. The Siting Council also instructed the parties to try to work together to see if they could reach an agreement before a new application was brought. And the parties did, both in good faith, meet. But we were not able to reach an agreement as to what the project ought to be. Eversource firmly believed a new transmission line was needed. The town's position was that there were distribution alternatives that could have sufficed. So that ultimately led to Eversource filing their petition for reconsideration, which is the second docket, as the First Selectman stated, which is docket 461A. That docket was a different route. What Eversource proposed in that docket was an all-underground line, a 2.3-mile underground line beneath public roads. From the town's perspective, that was a huge improvement. Much, obviously, when roads are already disturbed, so that if there's going to be the burial of a power line, you want it under roads, as opposed to under a ball field or in a undisturbed area. We still contested the need for the project in the new application. We had concerns about environmental impact, particularly the crossing of Indian Harbor. So what was proposed was to use a cofferdam to go under the harbor, and that was a concern for the town from an environmental perspective. The Siting Council, after, we're talking about months of litigation here, the Siting Council approved Eversource's new application, and we brought an appeal. Our appeal was based on our legal argument that we did not believe there were changed conditions to justify reopening and reconsidering their prior denial. And that is pending in the Connecticut Superior Court. What happened after we brought the appeal was months and months and months of discussion between the town and Eversource. And I give an enormous amount of credit to Jim Michael, who was our point person, as there were these technical meetings to see whether we could reach agreement to resolve the appeal, and recognizing that the Siting Council had approved the new project, whether we could satisfy the concerns of the town, because we still had concerns about environmental impact, concerns about construction methodology. We have reached a settlement agreement that we are asking the Board of Selectmen to approve. I will just provide a few of the highlights. First and foremost, instead of a cofferdam and a transmission line that would go through Indian Harbor, the settlement agreement would include a pedestrian bridge above Indian Harbor with the transmission lines affixed to that bridge, which avoids the environmental impact of the coffer dam entirely, so that is beneficial to the town. Eversource will build the bridge, they will pay for the bridge, and after construction, title will be conveyed to the town of the bridge. The town will receive a 2-year warranty from the construction contractor, and Eversource has agreed to hire and pay for an independent qualified engineer that will inspect the construction that will be agreed upon with the town. So that aspect of it we look at as a big improvement from what the Siting Council had initially approved. There are also a number of details relating to construction, in particular to minimize environmental impact that are beneficial to the town that have been agreed upon. So I think I already mentioned it'll be beneath public roads. I should have also said they're going to be solid cables, XLPE cables, as opposed to fluid filled. So that's also a benefit. Eversource has agreed to do curb-to-curb paving and permanent restoration of the roads, which was important for the town. We've worked out an agreement to limit any blasting, if any is needed, to protect the town's infrastructure, the force main. So there will be areas where it will be prohibited. Eversource agreed to work hours with the town. They agreed to a traffic management plan. The agreement requires compliance with town-issued highway permits, all from our perspective, a step forward from what the Siting Council had approved. This is all progress in the settlement negotiation. Now, there is a new substation that was ordered by the Siting Council at 290 Railroad Avenue, an open-air substation. While the town had argued for an indoor substation because of the additional cost, the Siting Council did not approve that. However, in our negotiations with Eversource, they have agreed to construct a 15-foot high brick perimeter wall around the substation to protect it from the surroundings. They've agreed to the town's preferred design of that perimeter wall so that it'll blend in aesthetically with the surrounding neighborhood. They've agreed that the wall will be built in accordance with our building code. And they've also agreed, Eversource has agreed to a landscape plan, again, an aesthetic benefit for where the substation is going to be. In a nutshell, those are sort of the high-level elements. This has been a 4-year challenge for the town. I give credit to both Eversource and the town for working as hard as they did and their technical teams to get to this point to resolve the dispute. The first selectman identified all the people I was going to recognize who have been tremendous within the town. I will add Mitch Mailman, who volunteered his time as an energy expert and really spent countless hours working with us and helping us to litigate the case. So I'm happy to take any questions that any of you may have.
No, I think it's been clear. The only thing I would add to what was said is that you should not be falsely modest. You had a lot to do with the outcome here, and you deserve the credit along with all the people that you and the first selectman named. And from my standpoint, having met with you privately, recognizing in any litigation there are risks, and therefore any settlement represents a meeting of minds and a compromise on both sides. Having said that, I think that the compromise that you negotiated and the team supported is extremely favorable to the town, and again, I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. I just want to acknowledge Tracy Alston from Eversource. Tracy is our community relations representative and one of the most responsive people I have dealt with at Eversource. So Tracy, aside from this issue, which you've been deeply involved with as the rest of us, you have continued to be an extremely present person and responsive, not only to me, but I believe the other elected officials who have your contact information to address regular operating concerns. But specifically on this, thank you for your time as well. I don't want to omit you from that. And I just want to reaffirm one thing, because it's often not thought of because we don't see it. and that is the importance of our wastewater treatment system. And that was an integral part of this last go-around because of the proximity of some of this activity to it. And we are investing millions of dollars to bring that up to compliance. We were under consent decree from the Department of Justice Environmental Division, and we cannot underscore enough the importance of protecting the integrity of that. And this does that, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other? Yes, Mr. Brady, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm Bob Brady from Riverside District 5. I've heard this about this pedestrian bridge for the last, I've been impressed for the last week or so. And a bridge across Indian Harbor is somewhat ill-defined unless you know how high up is it. For example, is it up close to the top of the harbor above the waste treatment plant, or is it down towards Indian Harbor Yacht Club? And
It's on Davis Avenue.
where is the bridge?
It's on Davis Avenue as you cross into Bruce Park. So there's a current vehicular.
There's a highway bridge there.
Correct. This would be parallel to it. I think the best example we can provide to you is if you go down to the Boys and Girls Club and you look out across headed toward Grass Island. To the left, there's the temporary fire station. There is a vehicular bridge, and several years ago now, too, a pedestrian bridge, just like the one that's being proposed, was installed. And it's got green wrought iron, and it, I think, is a wood deck, and that's comparable. Concrete? I'm sorry.
Just immediately adjacent to the.
Yes, so
the
pa-
auto- the
It's gonna
automobile
be
bridge is
very
separate.
close to the auto grid.
Excuse me?
It's gonna be very close to the automobile.
on the inlet.
Up at the top of, Minnetonka River.
Palmer Hill,
Palmer Hill Bridge, yeah.
similar, yes.
And on the inside. The,
Not a bridge across Indian Harbor.
correct. That, it's a good point to raise, though, in terms of, can you visualize where we are?
Barely.
Okay.
There's a reason I'm not an architect, or
So-
an engineer.
So I have no other questions. So I would make a motion to approve this settlement agreement as outlined by David Ball from Cohen and Wolf and ably negotiated.
I would second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So thank you. This puts to rest a very long and storied,
Only 4 years.
but thank you.
Thank you.
And Ken, if you have any questions related to that, I believe we're issuing a release that summarizes this, but the actual agreement will be available at some point in the near term. Under new business, we have several items. I'm going to propose to my colleagues, since we have the team here, that we take up H first. So can we just have a motion to take up item H, which is the Strategic Energy Conservation Plan of the Energy Committee of the Conservation Commission?
So moved.
Okay. Without objection. By way of introduction, received on June 7th, memo from our Conservation Commission outlining their work and documents that have reviewed the 10 years. Pardon me, I just, background noise. The report clearly identifies tasks associated with the goal of reducing energy consumption by 20% in the near term and 40% in the longer term. The primary task is to create an energy commission to achieve those essential and attainable goals. And so we're going to be hearing in more detail from our Director of Environmental Affairs, Patricia Sesto. And Patricia, you could introduce the members of your team. So thank you.
Thank you for putting us on your very full agenda today. Much appreciated. So the Energy Committee of the Conservation Commission was comprised of members from the Conservation Commission. We have Erling Seal here, and then members of the public. Bob Brady is representing, and then Sarah Cotaro, who's staff also in the Conservation Department. I can make this as quick as you'd like, or I can give you more detail depending on your schedule. I'll go through quickly. So we had a background that the Energy Commission is a perfect follow-on to the discussion you just had in conjunction with the substation issues within town. In 2017, this Energy Committee of the Conservation Commission was formed to help look at opportunities to reduce energy consumption within the town. The group is comprised of several energy knowledgeable people as well as interested residents, part of the Conservation Commission. And our purpose was to evaluate the energy consumption within the town buildings, promote conservation within the community, and then to lead by example. The evaluating of the energy consumption actually goes back to 2011 when the town buildings were benchmarked by a series of interns. As part of this process, we conducted a charrette, which stakeholders within the town hall and the municipal administrative entities were spoken with, and to identify projects and partnering, and then conduct an energy audit of the town hall with a 50/50 grant from Eversource. So we have had a series of past efforts going back even prior to the 2011 benchmarking. Going back to 2008, we had a clean energy program adopted, which was a resolution by the town to cut our energy consumption by 20%. Since that time, we have not done a particularly strong job of tracking those efforts. We have not met our 20% goal or even a 10% goal. And of the 162 communities within Connecticut who signed on to that goal, 28 met either their 10 or 20% goal, and of those 28, 23 have an energy commission of some sort. We signed on to Seed Pace, which again, another resolution in 2013. This program allowed our commercial entities in town to invest in clean energy, and then they would pay that back through a tax benefit. So effectively, the tax collector of the town would bill people who took advantage of that program. We had two, Sacred Heart and YMCA, the two entities that took advantage of that program. We had Solarize Connecticut, 48 new residents took on solar, which doubled solar in town, so that was good. But I don't know that we were really stuck with that program. And then Energize CT was a 2016 program where Eversource sought to sort of reinvigorate the community outreach, the diversion of funds through the legislature of their Clean Energy Fund. So their funds dried up, and so did that participation. But prior to that, we had 200 homes conduct energy audits, and 3,000 LED light bulbs distributed. The municipal building assessment. As I said, the buildings were benchmarks of the high school, the wastewater treatment plant, and the high school or town hall were identified as the three largest energy consumers. Not a big surprise. Town hall, subsequently, we had a level 1 and level 2 audit done of the building. It came out with 23 recommendations, but overall the committee found that the report fell short in a lot of ways. It played it safe. It had its own sort of internal limits that it imposed on the report, so we really didn't get from the report sort of the forward-thinking, bigger thinking that we would have liked to see. So that's a report that we're going to have to revisit in some other capacity. The group evaluated process impediments. We've got the Board of Estimate and Taxation. We have procurement procedures that we have to follow. And in speaking with Al Manelli, the superintendent of the town facilities, and Dan Watson, BOE facilities, the methodology in which we have to go through to procure certain things is turning out to be troublesome for them, manifesting itself into multiple vendors, different types of equipment. We're lacking consistency there, which then leads to problems down the road. In speaking with Chuck Zybeck of the purchasing, he believes appropriately that there is a fundamental responsibility to have transparency in our procurement process, and believes that more can be done with our RFQs, RFPs, and RFBs to better utilize that tool. Even with that, I think that both sides probably have legitimate points that we can work on. And then there's the budgeting process, that we don't have return of investment evaluation that looks at the longer life cycle costs of things. A return of investments might be shorter than would be appropriate if you're looking at renewable energy to get that proper payback. So we need to work with BET to evaluate their criteria and how that plays into larger goals. we're supposed to lead by example. And I will say that in the absence of an energy commission, as a whole, right now, we are fundamentally not in a position to lead by example or even do our due diligence in preserving the fiscal resources of the town. So we're not in that community leadership, which I think Greenwich has generally enjoyed over the years. To do that, an energy commission is absolutely essential. We have had a lack of centralized, coordinated, knowledgeable effort looking into this. This is a technical field, no mistake about it. It was a delight working with this group for the past 14 months. I've learned a lot and learned how much I really just don't know about this. It is a very specific field of expertise that with the right people on a commission who were knowledgeable in their own right and knowledgeable in building consensus and understanding the needs of the different entities that they would be working with is important. So establishing an energy commission we have a $6 million gas and electric bill annually for the town buildings. We cut that by 20% in a short-term goal, that's what, 1.2 million? And then 40% in the long-term goals, so very serious numbers. We have a commitment to reducing CO2, being ecologically responsible, but this is first and foremost, very blatantly, a financial savings for us. We would need to conduct energy audits for the major buildings, the majority of the buildings in town, to understand what we have, to prioritize the needs of those buildings, and get to a position where we could put in place a plan to reach these goals. We would need to establish standards for existing buildings and then new and renovated buildings. It's not that energy conservation is not a part of our planning, but it's not a priority. The Eastern Greenwich Civic Center is probably the closest tangible evidence. The request for qualifications did not explicitly put out there that we want people who are energy forward thinking. And when you don't put that out front, the type of people you attract is different. And there's also sort of this undercurrent within the architectural and design community that their clients don't necessarily have the appetite to discuss the increased costs up front in exchange for longer-term goals. So we failed to make that a known priority for ourselves. So we want to explicitly incorporate standards of energy efficiency into our RFQ, RFPs, and RFB. We want to pursue performance-based procurement, prioritize behavioral and systems management changes. We could get to that, based on the people that we spoke with, we could get to the 20% savings just by changing our behaviors of people like ourselves. I bet my light in my office is on right now, shouldn't be. And then system management. When the building closes down predominantly at 5 or 6 o'clock, are we half lighting the third floor? Are we half lighting other places? This is a sort of systems management that we can work our way into without huge upheavals in infrastructure and other more substantial mental and financial investments. We need to set CO2 reduction as a consideration in how we choose our end product. It is our responsibility to participate in that. We need to work with BET, purchasing, and law to assess the goals and impediments of our current procurement process, pursue retrofits for renewable energy within the community, establish and implement a plan to reach that 20% consumption. Establish and implement the plan. We've not had that. And then communicate to our community, educate them, assist them. We had, in February, a program for our large commercial energy users. We had over 80 people attend, not just from within Greenwich. This became a regional draw. We've had feedback that people have followed up on this. This was Tony Malkin is the one who gave the keynote speech associated with it. And I will say one of my takeaways from his discussion is this is not about being LEED certified. This is about hardcore financial prudence, good financial decision-making. He actually indicated the LEED standards of greenery, bike racks, and other things that are nice to have don't get to the heart of the matter, which is save money, save energy, save money. So there is an interest in the community, and we have the potential to be that leader on that if we organize ourselves with an Energy Commission. So that's the long and short of it. We believe that the Energy Commission would be best placed under the Board of Selectmen. Conservation has enjoyed having this, but it is a scope much wider than the Conservation Commission. And I also think that when people see it attached to the Conservation Commission, they take a step back and they don't really look at the other implications associated with it. It's much more than just conservation. Having it come through the Board of Selectmen, I think, would give that commission strength and the respect that all the town departments would need in order to make the changes and prioritize what they do in accordance with an energy commission. I am hopeful that the Board of Selectmen support this. That's our, supporting the report of the Energy Committee is our basic goal for today. In anticipation of that, I did look through with help of the First Selectman's office the language associated with other energy commissions in town, and there's a vast number. Blaze helped me with looking at towns of similar size to ours, and one, which was Cheshire's, really stood out to me as to reflect more closely the sorts of things that we have been focusing on, the things that we believe resonate with Greenwich. So I did take the liberty of working with that language and having it reflect what this committee has been speaking of, a jumpstart, should you choose to endorse our report.
Great. Pat, first I want to thank you and thank your team, many of them volunteers, for the enormous time and effort that was put into this. This is a very, I think you noted, it's a complex subject, but it's one that requires directed focus. So I'd like to move, we accept your report and tied to it, establish the Energy Commission you propose under this report, because I think you stated it better than I can. Without that focus, the results will not materialize, and this makes tremendous amount of sense for the town, for us as individuals as we look ahead. And so I want to thank, I know Sandy, you joined in 2017, has been our representative, and given his background, I spoke with him, he'd be happy to help with drafting the ordinance that would allow us to proceed with this. So that's the motion, to accept your report and to proceed with the establishment of the Energy Commission with my colleague, Mr. Litvak's help.
Delighted. I'm going to second the motion. I obviously favor the motion. I would say, and I think you know this, Pat, but I just want to make sure that it's said, the establishment of a commission is the beginning, not the end of the process. You know, it's nice to establish commissions. That's great. It's really what happens after that that matters. And so this is a process, and I know you know this better than I do, but we've talked about it, but I just want to make clear how I feel, which is, great, let's get the commission, but again, it's the beginning, not the end. We got a long way to go. It's going to require a lot of work. I second the motion.
Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Great job.
And I just see you put on here, just to name them, Robert Brady, Steve Hall, Frank Rusty Parker, Skip Parker, Erling Searle, and participation from Selectmen Sandy Litvak and Jill Oberlander, Chair of the Board of Estimate and Taxation, Sarah Coccaro, and your predecessor, Denise Savageau. So thank you all. And so the motion's been moved, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Oh, Mr. Meskers, Representative Meskers.
I was just going to comment, it's by happenstance, with my election, that I was appointed to the Energy and Technology.
No, I promise I won't. No one's complaining about the sidewalk anymore or teasing me. No, I promise. What I wanted to mention is it's by pure happenstance that I was appointed to the Energy and Technology Commission. So I would, advise the selectmen. We've got the 3 representatives in the House of Representatives up there that are serving on various of the committees that have deep contacts. Energy and Technology, although it's not the banking committee, the Green Bank does come in and report to us, and there's a lot of financing available through the Green Bank. all of the regulated entities come into us, all of the energy producers, et cetera. So we probably can work as a good resource, and I would suggest within the scope of what you're going to do on this commission, that you look at the parallel committees formed in the House and the Senate, and just use our elected officials. We're up there. There is a lot of uptime and a lot of downtime. And we can easily sit with the commissioners, we can easily sit with people, we can easily try to twist arms to get some of the state's resources, either financial and or analytical, to help us in our goal to get to the energy efficiency. So I would volunteer to work as, on an advisory basis with the commission while I'm serving on energy technology for the next year and a half. So.
Thank you, we welcome that.
Absolutely.
Okay, returning to the new business agenda, we have a couple of legal matters for which we will receive an update in executive session in several workers' claims settlements to hear about. So at this time, I would propose we go into executive session for those purposes and to interview, I believe, two people for various town boards and commissions.
Need a motion?
Is there,
Oh, so moved.
without objection?
Speak?
Yes. Yeah.
Who are you speaking to?
To the fifth graders at Glenville School.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, that's where I went.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is this for Flag Day?
No, we did Flag Day, but this is for their moving up or whatever they
Oh,
call
that's
it.
great.
Yeah. I spoke at the Philippine.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Without objection, 11:37. This is a resumption of the regular Board of Selectmen meeting, Friday, June 14th. We reviewed 2 worker compensation claims as well as 4 property tax appeal settlements. And for purposes of action today, I'm going to ask Ms. Hines to read the property appeal settlements first.
You wanted to probably do
Yes.
this first? Okay, the first one is docket number FST CB 17-603195-8S. It's parcel number 11-2550 for a tax credit of approximately $13,855 against future tax payments. If the plaintiffs were to have prevailed at trial, they would have been entitled to a cash refund of approximately $36,138 plus interest and costs.
So moved.
Second.
Agree.
Without objection.
The next case is docket number HHB CB 17-6039-357. It is parcel number 04-1421S. And that is for a tax credit of approximately $34,284 against future tax payments. If the plaintiff were to have prevailed at trial, it would have been entitled to a cash refund of approximately $147,287 plus interest and costs.
Move its adoption.
Second.
Without objection.
The next is a combined case, docket number HHB CV 16-603457, parcel number 01-1320S, and also docket number HHB CV 16-603458, parcel number 01-3169S, and that is for a tax credit of approximately $2,568 against future tax payments. If the plaintiffs were to have prevailed at trial, they would have been entitled to a cash refund of approximately $10,573 plus interest and costs.
Okay, is motion?
So moved.
Without objection.
We have docket number HHB CB 16-60345560, parcel number 06-2153S. That is for a tax credit of approximately $6,504 against future tax payments. If the plaintiff were to have prevailed at trial, it would have been entitled to a cash refund of approximately $10,182 plus interest and cost.
So moved.
Second.
Without objection.
Do we have to approve the Griffin settlement?
Yes, that too. Do you want to do that?
No, I didn't, I just.
No, but you good, that's fine.
Okay,
Do you- I-
Sure.
okay, this is a settlement of Teresa Griffin versus the town of Greenwich with a settlement in the amount of $895,000.
Okay, is there a motion?
Just question, I thought it was 890, is it 895?
$890.
I have 890.
I had
yeah.
892. Is
I'm
it?
sorry, $890,000.
We get to keep I'll move the approval of that.
Where are we going for lunch?
So the motion was made on a Griffin for $890,000. Is there a second? Okay, without objection.
Okay, the next settlement is Joe Marzullo against the town of Greenwich with a final settlement of $11,000.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, without objection, just for record, this is a settlement for a workers' comp claim.
Okay, the next one is also a workers' compensation case, Eileen Adams against the town of Greenwich. This settlement for the town that the town will be paying in the amount of $15,964.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, without objection. Is there any further business to come before the board?
Yes. Two nominations.
Okay. I mean, do what's the RTM September?
Like.
That would be a 3-year term that, I didn't bring my sheet with me, I believe it's for November the 1st. 19 to 22.
Second. Aye. Why is he up that, I mean, not only two?
I believe he filled a vacancy.
Oh,
Mhm. I can't think of his name either. We're all having premature senior moments.
that's what he said. Second. Aye.
The 26th, it's a Wednesday. At 10 a.m.
Okay, that concludes the business before the board. The next meeting is Wednesday, June 26th at 10 a.m.
Here.
In the town hall meeting.
I'd like to wish Happy Father's Day to all the fathers. Oh, we approved your item. Thank you very much. I'd like to wish all the fathers a Happy Father's Day, and to you, Sandy, Happy Father's Day too.
And the same back to you.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, without objection. An hour ahead of schedule. This is a remarkable group.